Hello everyone, so today what we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of questions that I was asked by pupils from different classes in year 10, which I think will be really useful for you to have a listen to some of the answers. A couple of them I've combined into one question because I had a few questions that repeated, but hopefully this will be really useful for you, and if there's anything, any other questions, just let me know. Okay. So the first question is, what is the best way to revise quotes and learn what they mean? Okay, so for me, number one, flashcards. Okay, and I often talk about when I talk about flashcards in class, I really don't see the point of, and I might do a video on this. I don't see the point of making a revision card that just has like all the information from a book just written down the revision card, and like there's nothing on the back of it. I don't really see the point in it. It might work for you. It wouldn't work for me, and it didn't when I was your age. For me, flashcards should be, if you be able to quiz yourself. So on the front, I might have a fill in the blank question. On the back, I've got the answer. The flashcard should take no more than, I would say, in max like a minute to make per one. I see some of you like painstakingly labouring over your flashcards. It's a waste of time. They're going to end up going in the bin anyway. I hate to break it to you, but just try and make it so that you can make it as quickly as possible. Okay, number two, record yourself saying the quotes that you might, that you've maybe written down in your flashcards on your phone. So for example, you can use the voice memos app. Some of you might not want to do it. I used to sometimes, especially if I'd left some revision till a bit last minute, I'd sometimes have it in my ears while I was doing something else. If you're walking to school, you might just have them playing in your headphones. Not that cool, but like it's just a good way of, if you're enjoy listening to things like audiobooks and things like that, might just be a nice way to do it. I used to sometimes, well, when I was, if I was going to record quotes, if I was writing them down, I'd sometimes have a specific song on that would help remind me of the quotes. Which can be useful as well. Write them on post-it notes, put them in places where you go a lot, in the kitchen, for example. I know that some people have things on their radiator in their bathroom, for example. Another one is learn one a day for a week, then you'll know 7 by the end of the week. If you just keep saying the same one over and over again, sounding absolutely crazy, for one per day, then you get to that 7, you feel really good by the end of the week. If you think across 3 weeks, then you can cover 7 quotes for each of your texts, and then it's like fantastic. Okay, right, number 5, use our master knowledge organisers and bare necessity sheet. I can always put that description if anyone doesn't have that, but I put together all knowledge organisers with like flexi quotes, they call them, quotes that can be used in lots of different situations, and that should be very useful for you. So, but for me, the number one way is flashcards, and that's something that I did when I was your age, and even if I had to study for something now, that's something I would do now, because I think it's the best way. And using colour as well, I like to have lots of different colours. It's worth noting that to make flashcards, you can literally just cut up the print paper from school. You don't have to order it yourself. If you do want to order them, you can get them on Amazon. I think I got a pack for like £1.67, so they are quite cheap online, which is good. Number 2, how do I analyse perceptively? Well, I've just done a video on this, which will be going up very shortly. But for me, the number one way of being perceptive, weigh up different options and always look for that however, look for things that other students won't talk about. If I'm looking for that however, I'm thinking about in my perceptive video, I look at in a short extract where we're looking at the narrator's feelings, and at the end of the text, we don't really know what her feelings are, and I kind of talk about, that it's kind of left up to our imagination, and that's fine. So sometimes it's about trying to think out of the box, really. Deeply think about individual words, come up with, clever ideas about these individual words. I often say that, perceptive students would think, what isn't there? So, the writer could have said this, but actually the writer chose to say this, and it's clear they chose to say this because it's more effective than saying that. So you could talk about what isn't there as well, which I think is something that's really perceptive to do. Apply real world ideas to the text, and then pick the best quotes, potentially unusual ones, to try and look at some quotes that not all students would pick out. Don't go for the easiest quote. In the hardtop extract, in the mock that you did previously, everyone said that hardtop was thin because it said hardtop is thin. Okay, it's not interesting, it's not perceptive. Look for the unusual quotes that you're like, right, okay, they're not going to write about that, I'm going to write about that. And practice makes perfect. This is something I'm going to say continue through this video, but please have a look at the perceptive video because that will answer your question in like much more detail. Okay, how long each week should we spend revising? I would say, in short bursts. For me, I'd recommend that in year 10, you should be making the resources that you need for year 11. I have my greatest bugbear is when I talk to a student the day before the exam, they're like, oh, I'm making flashcards. You should have done it like months ago. Okay, you should make the resources in year 10 so that in year 11 you can read through them, make other resources. I often say make your revision smaller, so make it on from a textbook, you turn it into a poster, then from a poster turn it to flashcards, etc. Okay, but for me, I would say 10 minutes a day for each subject if you can do. If you want to spend a bit more time on English and maths and science, for example, if you want to, if they're the ones you're struggling with, maybe a bit longer. But if you think 10 minutes a day isn't a lot, that's 70 minutes a week you probably weren't doing before. So for me, the 10 minutes a day kind of method I think is quite a good one. I know that in 10 minutes, I used to, when I was at A level, my teacher would say, right, you've got 10 minutes, go write me an essay plan, come back in 10 minutes, that better be done. And that was extremely effective use of time for me, that 10 minutes planning an essay out. If you do 10 minutes of essay plans a week, that's 7 essay plans. I have to do the maths then. That's 7 essay plans you've got at the end of the week then. So if I was you, I'd break it up into those 10 minutes a day. And then just do it. Don't stress about timings. Find a way that you like to revise and just get on with it. Okay. How can I get at least a 6 in poetry? Practice makes perfect. Getting to the 6 is really about practicing doing essays, being very clear. You haven't got to be perceptive to get a 6. It's just about being, clear, answering the question. I would say know at least 8 poems well, but know all the poems to a certain extent. Know what all the poems are about. Practice writing thesis statements, an easy way to help up your mark because you're becoming more argumentative, more analytical. Do some research, I would say, on interesting contextual knowledge on the poems and the poetry for that period. One of the best essays I've ever read on poetry included some contextual knowledge I hadn't even heard of. And so for me, I think that's actually a really interesting way of getting to a 6 because you can have a whole paragraph then that's bolstered by your contextual knowledge. And then talk about the images in the poem and what the images that are produced in the reader's minds and how these images are constructed. But for me, the number one thing to get into a 6 is being clear, answering the question. There's nothing worse than when pupils go off on a tangent and don't answer the question, and I'm like, I want to give you more marks, but I can't because you've answered the wrong question. Okay, how can I not panic? Actually, one of my favourite questions from this, and I've got this quote here from Psychology Today, because I'm someone that very much is a panicker, quite anxious about things like exams and things like that. But something that I've been trying to do and what I actually really recommend is to embrace the anxiety and think actually that being anxious and panicking is just your body's way of responding and your body's way of preparing you. My mum always used to say that if you're panicking, the only thing that's going to get rid of it is by doing more preparation. And so think about, what it says here, your body's trying to alert you to something that you care about. If you panic, it shows that you care. I like students that panic because I'm like, yeah, they know that, they want to do well. So rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to get really panicked, think, do you know what, actually, I'm going to get really hyped up. Yes, I'm going to be nervous about it. That's fine. But that nervousness is going to drive me to do more revision, and I'm going to do, more of my flashcards, more of my notes, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that nervous energy to push me forward rather than to hold me back. And so, rather than thinking, how can I not panic, I'd invite you to instead think, how can I use my panic better? I feel like a motivational speaker. Have faith in yourself. Try what I call the 100% tactic. When I was at GCSE, I used to try and be going to the exam thinking, right, I've got 100%. I could only lose marks. I've just got this time to prove to the examiner that I should lose as least marks as possible. So I just go in, try and be really, really positive and think, right, okay, I've already got the full marks. It's a bit of a weird way of doing it, but I just try and think I can only lose marks rather than feeling like, oh my goodness, I've got to get to 54 marks. You know what I mean? Just try and kind of flip it and see it more as I used to kind of try and see it as like a challenge, almost as a game. How many of these different ideas can I get in right? Can I get forming? Can I get a structure in my literature essays? And just try and be a bit more competitive with yourself rather than kind of sinking into the panic. Have a pre-exam routine. This is so strange. I never talk about this. I always used to have like I could have like a boost bar and like a Lucasade before an exam because in my mind I was like, giving me energy, which is just ridiculous. Even now, like if I've got to prepare for something, I think like a boost bar will give me energy. How ridiculous! It's just because I want chocolate. But some people have different things. Like they like, let's say if like you have a particular routine of like every time before an exam, you have to like say a certain thing, you have to do a certain thing. If you have a routine, sometimes you can feel like more comfortable because you feel like more settled. So having a routine might be something that you want to give a go. Complete lots of essay plans as you cover as many possible topics as possible, because if you think the more prep you do, the less you're going to panic. Okay. How can I get a better grade on the creative writing question in paper 1? Actually, one of my favourite questions. For me, I actually think it's very easy to increase your grade in creative writing. I'm going to talk about this later on. It's about quality rather than quality. It's about quality rather than quantity. And so in that way, don't worry about getting into 7, 8, 9 paragraphs. Max you should do is 6. I even say potentially aim for less than that and just focus on that quality. Focus on description. Practice writing descriptive sentences about the sky, the ground, the wind that you can fit into any piece. I literally always, I remember when I was your age, I would always try and think if there was some way I could get fireworks in, for example. I'd describe them, for example, as I think I talk about kind of like neon watercolor paint splashing around the sky. Like how cliche, but it sounded quite good, and it was just something I could fit into a lot of different pieces of work, and just be tactical about it. It is absolutely fine to repeat stuff. I've taught at one school where they would just practice writing about being alone, because you can apply that to any text. I know that other teachers teach, to write about a storm coming in, because that can happen, in any image that comes up. Just be tactical about it, be savvy. Use structural features. Always include a 1-sentence paragraph. Perhaps try to include a shift in time as well, because it's quite easy to get the structural marks in that way. If you're really trying to get the kind of the top end marks, take an out of the box approach. So for example, I remember I once had to do one about a storm. It was like a snowstorm, and it was an image of a really, really snowy street. And when I wrote it all about this storm and everything. It was very, very descriptive. And at the end, I revealed that it was actually in a snow globe. So that was just a bit of a plot twist, bit of drama. And so for me, that was a way of taking out of the box approach. And the more you practice doing out of the box approaches, the better. Vocab. Easiest way to do that is get some colour imagery in. So you could talk about the periwinkle blue sky, the lapis blue ocean. You might talk about the mustard flecked wallpaper, for example. So easy to increase your vocab marks if you just get in some interesting colour words. Punctuation, trying to get a list in using a colon, get some dialogue and speech marks in, get an exclamation point in, get an ellipsis in, the dot, dot, dot. Easy way. And I would try and do some in the first paragraph, so that you instantly get the marker's attention, instantly increase the marker's confidence in you, because the marker wants to give you those marks. And number 6 is read for pleasure. The better writers are those that read more. Even if you're just reading extracts, even if you just try and read an extract a day, that will really, really help you. Okay. So, how do you pass English? I love this question. It just made me laugh. I was like, I like how it's. I was thinking, how can I kind of try and boil this down into one answer? For me, it's about being clear and answering the questions. Those pupils that answer the question are able to pick out some evidence. It's just that magic number 3. Pick out 3 things. They're the students that are going to pass. Okay, it's all about practicing it. For literature, revise the plot. The plot is the most important thing. Okay, and then try and get your quotes around that as well. But number 1 is the plot. If you know the plot of Romeo and Juliet, for example, you'll be able to slot the extract in. You'll then understand what the extract means, even if you haven't got a foggiest what Shakespeare is talking about. If you know the plot, you're able then to know, okay, oh, actually, this is where Lord Capulet is talking to Paris about him marrying Juliet. Oh, okay, all of a sudden now I can write about this. I can talk about Lord Capulet being a good father, because I know that here he is saying, whoa, let's slow down. Juliet's way too young to get married because she's literally 13. Okay, and because I know the plot, I can write about it. It doesn't matter. I've also got a video on how to analyse Shakespeare, if that's something you're struggling with, so just check out if you want to. And then for me, maximise your marks on question 5 for language for paper 1 and paper 2. So your argument piece and your creative writing piece. I've seen pupils go from grades 3 to 5 literally because they had a good question 5. So if I was you and if you're sitting on that 3 to 4 boundary, your question 5s are your best friend. Easy marks to get there. What can I expect from the English papers? Again, I had to kind of think about this. I was kind of like, I don't know, at first, and then I was like, actually, no, I know what you mean. In essence, if you're going, when you're approaching that, you know, when coming into the English papers, what you're going to expect to find is that it's going to be difficult to stick to those timings. They do not give you enough time to answer the questions, and it's very cruel of them. So if I was you, you know, it's all about, again, practicing, but it's about practicing being concise, being clear, getting to your point quickly. Okay, that's why it's imperative that you practice in time conditions. When your teacher is telling you, when I'm telling you to do a question in class, like, just get on with practicing it in those time conditions, because in the exam you're going to really appreciate those times you got to practice. Number two, they will always give you extracts where there's lots to look at. There's always going to be extracts where there's lots of obvious things to look at, and also lots of things that are less obvious to look at. Okay, they're never going to give you a rubbish extract. Yes, it might be super boring, but it's never going to not have stuff to look at. Okay, number three, they like to test you with the questions. In literature, they like to say, let's look at this theme through this character, or vice versa. You know, they won't usually just ask you, tell me about Romeo. It's going to be like, tell me about male, I don't know, like toxic masculinity through Romeo. That would be a really difficult one, wouldn't it? Well, it would be quite an interesting question, but they wouldn't word like that. But yeah, so they like to look at things through things. But there's, so through the difficult questions, there's much more room for perception. So if you're worried about there being a difficult question that's going to come up, just think, actually, the more difficult the question, the easier it's going to be for me to get perceptive marks. Try and flip your thinking. So yeah, that's what I think you can expect from it. You know, expect it to be challenging in terms of time, but there's always going to be lots to talk about. Okay. Okay, how should I revise quotes of poetry? So I've talked about how to revise quotes earlier on, but if I was you, I'd focus on learning 2 quotes for 8 poems, and I would, if you're doing love and relationships, you know, find one of these ellipses where it's got these kind of connections. And if I was you, I'd pick, you know, one for passionate love, one from loss and heartbreak, one from longing, one from family love, another one from like admiration, and then a couple that you like, and then, you know, just try and cover your bases. Be very tactical with it. At university, we would always, me and my friends would always try and guess as to what the paper was going to be on. I don't recommend that. But, you know, we'd always be tactical and think, right, okay, well, if we can look at these poems, these themes connect to these poems, so we've covered that theme. Okay, think about it thematically, and just, you know, keep repeating them, write them down. Learn individual one-word quotes. It's fine to learn micro quotes, 2-word quotes. For example, anchor, kite. Okay, famous quotes from Mother Any Distance. Famous, but, you know, famous within like English. Really easy to learn. Okay, we'll go to the next. Right, okay then, so we're nearly there. How can I get a better grade on the English language papers? In order to improve your marks, I would say know the questions inside out. If I said to you, paper 1, question 3, it'd be very beneficial to you if you're able to know what that is, that's the structure question. And you know that, you know, in the structure question, I'm going to look at beginning, middle, and end, and I'm going to look at focus, shift, zoom. Okay, so the more literate you are in terms of knowing the questions, the easier it will become for you to be able to distinguish what you need to do for each question. And then when it comes to the actual exam, you're like, oh, right, this is the structure question. Okay, so for that I need to do begin, middle, and end. Okay, I can write about that. Okay, so you know, the more you know the questions, the easier it's going to be for you. Focus on question 5s for language. If you're, as I said before, if you're looking to move from that 3 to 4, 4 to 5, because they're, you know, quick fixes. Both question 3s for language have easy marks too. And then for literature, know the plots, practice writing better paragraphs, practice writing introductions, and that's how you get a better grade. I've just noticed that's only about English language, but yeah. So when it comes to language and literature, it's really about, you know, being clear and practicing. Okay. How would I be able to answer unseen poems perceptively? Very similar to in terms of when I talked to you earlier about being perceptive, but some kind of quick hacks being perceptive when it comes to unseen poems. I always look at the titles and the beginning of poems, because that sets the tone, the title does, as does the beginning of the poem. There's usually something interesting to look at when you look at the title of the poem as well, maybe comparing them, maybe also looking at the endings as well. Look for however and the alternative viewpoints, as we talked about earlier, you know, that, you know, what if, or, you know, but kind of points. Find that counter argument. Practice writing about language and poetic techniques in a meaningful way. So, for example, if I found that there's a caesura, so like a pause in the middle of a line, I am not going to write about it if there's not a specific reason for it being there. I'm only going to write about things where I think there's, you know, there's something meaningful for me to talk about. Okay, it's all well and good if I can identify a metaphor, but there's no point, you know, if there's nothing I can really write about it, there's no point me talking about it. Okay. This question about how to answer settings questions is obviously from some of the really difficult mock I set on setting in A Christmas Carol. For me, you know, I've never seen a settings question. I just thought it was a nice stretching challenge one to do. I've never seen one in the AQA GCSE papers. But if you say settings did come up, revise the different settings and practice writing about their effect and their importance. If you're asked about it, choose 2 to 3 important settings and try to choose a lesser well-known setting. And then, in order to answer it, you know, in detail, write about the literal and symbolic meanings of each of the settings. So, for example, the lighthouse in A Christmas Carol is described as this solitary lighthouse. Literally, it's a lighthouse on its own, but symbolically, it reflects Scrooge and is kind of, you know, this kind of representation of Scrooge in building form. Okay, so like you can talk about things in that literal and symbolic way, and I've done a video on literal and symbolic meanings of Romeo and Juliet on my channel, so check it out. You can apply that literal and symbolic meaning idea to any text. Okay, think about why that setting was used. Why not pick another setting? Why have they picked that? Why is it described? And then look at the description. You know, why is it described as a dismal little cell? Why use the word cell? Okay, connotations of prison, for example. Okay, so really look at, you know, why are those settings being picked and how are they being described, and try and pick some less well-known ones. That's my top tips when it comes to setting. I'm really panicked about missing school at the moment because of lockdown. How can I try not to worry so much? Everyone is in the same boat. You'll catch up. The teachers will make sure you do. See this as time to make some revision resources. Try and flip it. Think positively, and then just take it one day at a time, guys. Because at the end of the day, that's all that we can really do, and just kind of wait it out. Okay. Any more questions? Let me know.